And here we are again, so straight after lunch, which is actually always the most challenging slot, because people you just grabbed your lunch, you come back, continuing watching the live stream. I'm so pleased to have Dieter Hoffend over here. He's the director for large enterprises and new businesses. Nice to meet you, Dieter.
Sasha, nice to meet you too. And I didn't have any lunch, so I'm.
Me neither.
That's okay.
I've been just sitting on a panel
So
in a different hall.
So we should be very much, pumped up for this for this interview. Awesome.
So Dieter, tell us a little bit about what your position is in Intel. We all know about this job title, but sometimes it's a little bit hard to define it.
It's a long job title. The thing I'm doing is one of the most exciting jobs at Intel, besides the one that our CEO has, BK, Brian Krasanich. No, honestly, I'm responsible for our large enterprise businesses in Germany and Austria. One of the focus areas that we're driving as automotive is such an important industry for Intel. We look very much after the automotive market. There are a couple of other verticals that are very important too. Automotive is one of them. We cover things like healthcare, which is also an interesting piece of the equation. We do cover the financial services, which is obviously interesting. And then we take care of things like high-performance computing, cloud service provider. This is kind of the new buzzword. Education, which seems a bit weird in terms of how does that fit actually to a large enterprise, but it's a very dedicated target market for us. So those are the elements, and we have transportation logistics to this one, which is very specific to the needs of our transportation and logistics environment. And then we take care of retail, which is very, very and very interesting marketplace, with all of the digital signages and whatever have you, right? But automotive clearly is one that is close to my heart. I did run a large account for Intel down in the south of Germany, close to Munich. So
who can guess
who that was. And we started working with them, 10, 12 years ago already in the IT space, which is actually where we're coming from, right? So heritage for Intel in the traditional automotive environment is literally IT. That's where we are known for. That's what we do for a living since many years, and where we've been building our credibility. And many years ago, the guys came and said, you know what? Our biggest challenge in the industry is to actually compete with all of those new gadgets that come into the play. At the time, there were PDAs. Nowadays they're called smartphones. And the matter of the fact that people basically said, why would I want to buy a 10-plus-year-old equipment in a car when I can get the stuff, literally for free on a new smartphone? So they came with a very clear business need to Intel to say, can you help us standardize on what this is all about, right? Because that's what you're good at, and that's what you're known for at Intel. So can you help us to basically work on a platform, work with the ecosystem to deliver a compelling solution? That is an interesting approach, and we started working with those guys, 7, 8 years ago, and it actually scales in the industry. It is a long run, and the long run is literally because the industry per se, obviously, working very much in silos, is not that keen of basically doing building blocks. Because fundamentally, and I would agree with that, if you are a tier one supplier like the Bosch, the Contis, the Harmans of the world, that's potentially a threat, right? Because here comes Intel, does building blocks, and here you go. But that said, it takes away a lot of investments for the tier ones in terms of platform development, software usability is a big thing. So I think there is a shift there, left and right. Everybody's trying to work on their claims. But fundamentally, we're in that industry for some while. We have invested heavily. The good thing here is, I guess, that Intel, and that is one of the very good things about the company, has realized very quickly that it's not the chip head that can do it, right? So we literally went out and said, who's available in the marketplace that can help us? And if you've seen, and if you ever come to Karlsruhe, you're happily invited to see the automotive side. It's an own site with about 120 people, purely automotive. So those guys really live and breathe automotive. They really understand what this is all about in terms of the technology and requirements. So that's fantastic. And we take this as obviously the sales leads in the organization then very much into our customer base and try to get our platforms across the board.
I think it's a very, very challenging industry, not only for the car makers, but also for you to match it, because I think you made a very, very crystal clear point by saying, out of a sudden, they're facing a development cycle of a platform that is just constantly changing, like 10, 12 months. And we're getting the new device, we're getting the latest tablets, we're getting the latest smartphones. And then we're talking about a platform that takes in between 5 to 7 years to develop and has also a life cycle of 20, 30, sometimes 40 or 50 years.
Yeah.
How does it match?
Yeah, I think fundamentally, I would go a little step further on this one. I guess, and that was my comment to a lot of the people that I'm talking to in the industry, it's not about the technical feasibilities, it's the willingness and the desire.
Yeah.
And that starts actually with the top, the CEO. Right? For a lot of those CEOs, and I think you met a couple of them too in your endeavors, you know, they don't take this electronic thing for granted, right? It's all about the engine and the design and the, I don't know what Spaltmaße means in English, but you know, it's the shape and form of the car that basically differentiates, right?
The gaps in between.
The gaps in between,
parts,
So number one. Number two is they're still in this mindset is, I'm gonna make this on my own and I can make it better than the rest of the world, which is stupid, which I tell them every time. It's like, you know what, just shop at your IT departments and have a look at how they deploy the stuff, right? If they would gonna go the same route as you do, chassis would be silver, yellow, green, painted, whatever have you. No, they're gonna go the opposite. They're gonna go standards and they differentiate on the software stack, right? So I think there are a couple of things that need to come into mindset of the automotive industry on opening up from that traditional kind of environment to the new environment. And I must admit, I see this happening, right? A lot of people moving into the Silicon Valley, a lot of research development subs basically get founded there for many years. We got a lot of requests from the senior management actually to do meetings in the Silicon Valley when they do actually their shows. So they're starting to open up because they figure out that they have to talk to companies like us. There are many others out there that are in that segment, but they need to talk to industry leaders in the information and communication technology segment to better understand where the cars are heading. So that's going to happening at the moment. And, you know, to your point, clearly you have to then start drilling it down into what's feasible. Give you the example, when you talk to the Tesla guys and the Tesla drivers, they are, hey, fantastic, I've got a new software update coming on overnight. You know, imagine this happening to Mercedes driver, and I'm not, you know, poking on Mercedes as a topic, but, you know, I think it's the question on, are people willing to accept things like updates overnight?
Right.
And I think that is something that you may find in that specific places and specific countries. But I would argue that, you know, in the mature markets like a German environment or a European environment, it's going to be tough to basically accomplish. So, you know, working within that boundary conditions and making sure that quality is a stretch, right? I mean, look into the variations of cars that are on street today, regardless what kind of automaker you're looking at. You have to manage an entire fleet of cars, and you're going to make sure the quality of suspension up to the electronic is going to be top, right? Absolutely, so you don't want to fiddle around with it for the time being. So that's the boundary conditions. I guess a lot of people have recognized that they need to change and move. We see this in our debates and discussion with the OEMs pretty much on how they differentiate their platforms going forward in the way that they architect them. The partitioning looks totally different, so they're going to, you know, take RF tuners out of the MGU as an idea, right? So a lot of stuff is happening, so they potentially can exchange even smaller parts on a head unit to basically make it compatible and state of the art. So this life cycle, even though the long life cycle is, as you stated, 5 to 7 years, depending on the car maker, in between that you could exchange parts of it. So that's forward thinking. I mean, it will take a while, but I guess the good sign is the guys recognize they have to do stuff. And the interesting other piece, which goes in the back end of the equation, is like data and who owns data. And the matter of the fact that people like Google or Apple, you know, touting to become automotive guys, make them start to feel nervous, which I think is good.
Absolutely.
And I have seen a lot of people being very, very proactively asking, what do we do with this, right? So versus in the past, it was always the trend, you know, I'm going to go the one that basically aligns with Apple first to get the first iPod in the car. The automotive guys have evolved and said, hey, hang on a minute, how do I harvest, you know, my kind of data and my kind of relationship to my customer base and don't give it away for free to someone like an Apple, Google, Samsung, you name them. So there is a bit of a shift there.
I like that, because sometimes you really need to tickle them. You're talking about an industry that's over 125 years old, right? And all of a sudden they have to make this digital transformation. It's going to be really interesting. And I actually love that those players like Apple and Google were going after this market because it was, there were quite some interesting negotiations going on, and I know about some. And I'm actually, I'm going to speak the closing keynote in July in Munich for the Bavarian Car Maker Association.
Okay.
And I will basically tell them, hey, listen, guys, make sure that you are working together on standards, that you are going to come up with something else than Google, let's say an Android or an iOS, because it's a huge asset. And I think it's very, very important also for the German manufacturers, because they still have this advantage. First of all, there's no other brand in the world that is so connected to a country like made in Germany, right? And it stands for solid build quality, long lasting, and all of this. Plus, if they can combine this with the asset of we're taking care of your data, we have our own systems. It's maybe going to stay in Europe, or in Germany. That's going to be a very, very big advantage to be competitive in the future. And what you mentioned before, when we're looking at the top three premium car manufacturers in the world, which is Audi, BMW, and Mercedes, they all have their R&D offices in Silicon Valley. It's so crucial. I mean, you guys have been also down there for quite a while, which also makes it easier for you guys now to communicate. There's a new fresh wind and a new breed of engineers coming up that are really going after car manufacturers right now and getting hired over there.
No, I would agree, and I think that's the very good and very positive side. If honestly, if I would have a wish, and I kind of started to state this, let's work together, not fight it, right? Yeah. So you're getting so much more traction and time to market, as we all call this in English terms, advantages if you cross-collaborate. Absolutely. And again, the differentiation is not going to happen on the hardware, right?
No.
It's going to happen on the software implementation and the story behind it. So, make it as standard as possible and scale it. And that would be my advantage. And then number two would be, let's really collaborate. I mean, within an IT environment, collaboration means collaboration within the environment, and I'm hopefully not stepping on anybody's shoes here, but working with the automotive industry, there's a different kind of description of collaboration, I'd say. Once in a while, more dependency than anything else. That doesn't foster innovation in my perspective. So it's the open dialogue, what needs to change in order to make it successful? How can I scale this? That would, I guess, be the next kind of infusion.
Especially when a lot of this was outsourced to the tier ones before, right? So it was basically all about, okay, you guys are going to take care of this, right? And it's somehow of a modular system. We're going to squeeze it into our new car, and there we go. It's very, very crucial that we already start to collaborate on an R&D level, on a fundamental level, especially when we're talking about industries that have such different life cycles in terms of how they evolved over the last 20 years, took somehow different roads. This is, I think, when I'm talking at a developers conference, and they ask me about the next big thing, I'm constantly saying it's going to be the car. Believe it or not, it's going to be the car, because you guys, if you guys are going to upload an app to Play Store or to iTunes, you will have like 1 million competitors for a 99-cent app right away. It's because you're selling to platforms that cost $200, $300, $400. And if you have the opportunity to sell to a user or a platform that buys something for $50,000, $67,000, or to $100,000,
different story.
A completely different story. And we're still selling. I think the car industry is doing pretty well. 82.5 million units last year. They're doing very well. We have the top three Germans. They have like 4 record years in a row. So it seems to work out for them.
It actually does, and I think I think a lot of those guys looking also into the future buying patterns, right? I mean, people that are my daughter's age or my son's age that basically will potentially buy a car on totally different means than you and I had bought a car, because of connectivity or car sharing, whatever models there are. I think they do the utmost to understand what this new buying power will actually want from the manufacturers, and I think they are the ideas about electric vehicles and things like car sharing within the bigger cities and the mega cities absolutely makes sense, and it fits very nicely into the bigger kind of mobility story. That obviously then ties back to us, right? I mean, we do a lot of it actually in smart cities and in smart energy and whatever have you, right? So, if you look at it from an Intel perspective, there's a lot of very interesting elements to it that makes it so compelling to work with it. That said, and from our perspective, it's been also a long journey for us to recognize that it is a long journey because it's nothing you do overnight. So you have to invest constantly, you have to be on your toes, and you have to talk to those guys on a permanent basis, right? That was something which was new for us at the beginning.
What you mentioned about a generation, and I'm actually telling the car manufacturer, I mean, you guys almost, especially in a metropolitan area, you almost lost a generation of potential customers. Yeah. And you produce one of the most emotionalized products in the world. But now technology is sexy and got emotionalized. So you just need to bring it together right now to get these guys back.
Yeah, I think just looking at watching actually TV over the last couple of weeks, and I don't know if you recall one or two of the ones that I'm referring to, you see a lot of people putting connectivity in the front and the center of their advertisings, which I think personally is overdoing it. Because then you don't see the car anymore. You just and it always connects to your, whatever favorite smartphone of the world.
It has to be a given,
right? But all I'm saying is, you see them, sweeping too fast. In my opinion, there is still the focus, which is the car, which is the asset, right? Yeah. Whether it's sexy or smart or, fuel efficient or powerful doesn't really matter. But it is an emotional exercise. But they shouldn't give away this kind of sexiness, right? Yeah. And at the moment, and you may remember some of the adverts I'm referring to, it's too much centric on, and it connects. Yeah, right? Yeah. And to your point, it should be a given, right? It's, you get in your car, the stuff is there, whether it's stored in car, on premise, in the cloud, really doesn't matter. It should be ubiquitous.
And it's very important, in my opinion. And trust me, sometimes it's even a little bit scary to see what's going on with some car manufacturers about, just the standard of how many people they're actually having in there and their big data or IT division or whatnot, and they know that they have a problem. At least they realize this. It is just very, very important to have you guys step in, and I think it's also what you're doing over here in Germany, what you're doing in Karlsruhe, is just very, very crucial for the German car manufacturers to talk on during the development, during the design process on a very fundamental level, to figure out what's important and what's crucial for the customer, not for the customer right now, but maybe for the soon-to-come customer. Yeah. Because, like I said, I live in a city with Taipei where you don't want to drive. Trust me, it is just this is a real challenge. But the public transport system is also so good. But besides that, we'll see more scenarios, and you've mentioned this before, with Car2Go, with Drive Now. That became very, very popular in those metropolitan areas. Yeah. If we can combine this with technology, absolutely. If we can combine this with a way of personalizing our cars again, I think this is how you can win the future customers.
I mean, just starting with the parking lot, right? Or parking spot is the issue. I'm living downtown Munich, and I'm having this on a daily basis. It's like, at a given point in time, you're driving home, that you don't get a parking space, even the ones that cost 15 euros if you park illegal, which is a challenge, right? If there would be a service that says, I'm going to drop my car in front of my flat or my whatever, living rooms, and somebody takes care of it, and I'm going to get it back, the next morning at 7 o'clock, and I would pay there, instead of my leasing fees, I would pay that on a monthly basis for that service, would be fantastic, right? So things like that will basically evolve, pretty sure. Now, to your point, and I just want to make sure that one thing is also mentioned, with the acquisition of the Infineon wireless experts actually a couple of years ago, we also now have access directly to the communication piece, which is becoming so crucial, right? You can do whatever you want to do in the car. If the car is not constantly connected on LTE, whatever, you're lost. So, to your point on expertise in Germany, I would absolutely support this. We got the guys in Karlsruhe who are the automotive experts. We got our friends in Neubiberg who are the communication expert, bringing this together, and defining actually what the car manufacturers need is an awesome capability. And again, there Intel has also changed. In the good old days, there was very little variation on products availability.
Yeah.
It was the stuff that came out of the factory defined as such. In those days, we do a lot of more kind of specified, customized, solutions if there is a demand for the marketplace. And then again, to my earlier point, if the car manufacturer would say, what, guys, at Intel, that's a platform that we want, scalable from A to Z, with a solution that communicates, then you're going to put volume behind it, and then the story becomes a very interesting one for all of us.
So what's going to be the next big thing for you guys? What's the breakthrough technology for the next 2 years?
I think for us, in all fairness, it was establishing ourselves as a credible player in this segment. While we do gazillions of products, high quality, we have to basically, run through, the processes and, can you deliver actually what you're supposed to deliver in an in-vehicle infotainment piece. The next big thing for us actually is, combining this with the word called ADAS, Advanced Driver Assistance, which is soft and hard ADAS, and then ultimately autonomous driving. And I think that is where the true kind of value of Intel potentially comes to play, because that's compute and communicate in one thing. The whole architecture of the car will need to change. You are not going to be able to do stuff that you do today. A little bit of IVI, in-vehicle infotainment, a little bit of ADAS. That requires compute in a thermal envelope that basically we can manage. If you see our roadmaps, with kind of 3-watt thermal envelopes and high-performance computing parts, that's a very interesting thing. And then you're going to talk about domains and whatever have you in the car. So that's going to be great. Next platforms are lined up. Atom-based platforms are coming to the marketplace. We are working very close with the industry also on enhancing our feature set in terms of also building SIPs, boards that basically fit into the automotive world with BSPs and drivers and whatever have you. Security will definitely come into play after kind of the well-known things that happened to BMW and the other guys and opening up doors. So that's an interesting piece of the equation. And again, we are very well settled there to play a role. So I think future is bright for the automotive guys, working with Intel hopefully in the future, stronger than before, and it's a good place to be.
Plus, you can still experience a lot about this here on the booth.
Excellent, yeah, absolutely.
So we have a nice cockpit over there from BMW. You can see, how you're collaborating together with them. It's part of the Intel Labs.
It's part of the Intel Labs. It's actually a part of a bigger kind of called Aramis-funded project, FP7, which is the European Federation product. It, in essence, basically what it demonstrates is the capabilities of running multiple operating systems on one system, which is in essence where the whole industry will need to lead itself to, because you don't want things to happen on your core-based platform, so you don't want somebody to play around with your accelerator or brakes or whatever. On the other hand, you want to allow your backseat entertainment guys to download stuff on Android-based or whatever-based kind of solution. So you have to have a virtual machines
exactly. Running.
And again, here comes what Intel has been doing for many years in the world, translating into the automotive space in different form factors and boundary conditions, but fundamentally, same stuff.
Fantastic, Dieter. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
If you guys want to check it out, it's at CeBIT Hall 2 Intel booth. And we're going to have a little bit of a break. And we have Nicole going hands-on with the Intel. Oh, almost. We have an Intel commercial, but it's an Intel-based Toshiba Z20T Ultrabook. So check this out. Thank you so much.